The idea is to have quick introduction by Tijn and myself. We have maybe 5 to 10 minutes slides just to kind of bring you up to, not to speed, but set the stage for what's coming. And then we will have a panel session with certain panelists that we will introduce. One of our panelists have to leave before noon, so we keep this also in mind. And then we have presentations, two abstract presentations that have been published from the RE-DWELL committee for this conference. And then the final panel, which we have more panelists. Yeah, so my name is Marko Horvat. As before I already said, if you were listening, I work at the University of Zagreb in Croatia on comparative analysis of 3 countries' modernization policies, what happened after privatization in the 1990s and how the outlook is today. And then I give the floor to Tijn.
Thank you very much. So my name is Tijn Croon, as you heard this morning, supervised by Marja, who is also present here. Looking forward to discuss the things Marko just described. This is an overview of what we're going to do today. So first, we're going to give you some daunting statistics to kind of state all the problems out there in the world and Europe specifically in an introduction. So, first of all, this is, like probably an image you all recognize. It's the age, the construction periods of the European housing stock, distinguishing the different member states of the EU and the UK for this occasion. They were still invited, and this shows, like there is a range, but. Compared to to other continents, the European housing stock is rather old, and this, of course, brings challenges because it was constructed based on outdated standards. Back in the day when they were constructed, especially after the World War II in the reconstruction period, it was all about speed. The housing shortage was at least as big as it is in the present day, and therefore a lot of prefabricated and rather poorly insulated buildings were constructed. So this, of course, brings the first challenge. Because of this poor insulation, the carbon emissions of heating and cooling of the European housing stock are quite high. While there is still quite a huge discrepancy of the carbon equivalent. That's the output of heating and cooling in Europe. This is a statistic we derived from the State of Housing report of Housing Europe. We were quite surprised actually by these huge differences because, as you can see, there are Scandinavian countries that almost have no output. Well, the reason for that is their energy production, right? So the fact that Iceland has a carbon equivalent per capita of 10 kilograms and Luxembourg, over 1,600, doesn't mean that their housing stock is that better insulated, but it kind of is explained by their energy input, their energy sources. But still, this is a first a huge problem that is derived from this poorly insulated stock. And we all have a big challenge ahead towards 2050 to make our building stock close to carbon neutral. Another problem, which is more in the social sphere, is that Europeans are increasingly unable to heat their homes and to cool their homes in winter, which is particularly a problem across the Mediterranean. And this is a statistic from 2022, which was, of course, a unique period in time with the energy crisis. But still, over 34% higher average across the EU of people that expressed themselves that they were unable to heat their homes in winter. Another daunting statistic, something we have to consider, something that I'm working on personally, in the research project to find out how we could overcome specifically energy poverty in the context of the energy transition. And of course, this statistic was very much fueled by the energy crisis. This is an energy price index from a Finnish research institute that shows how big the peak actually was in terms of residential energy bills, and in a way still is, right? I mean, energy bills lag the kind of market dynamics, and still, this is August 23, so a half a year ago, but still we see that the prices are way above longer averages. And now I'll pass the floor again to Marko for some more daunting stats.
Some more daunting stats. Also, naturally, we want to invite you to comment. If you have anything to say, just please interrupt us. So we continue with some statistics, looking at the end of 2016. This number there on the y-axis is indexed from let's say 0, and it compares the rents and housing prices. So you can see above 40% of increase in housing prices in 2022 at certain point, when the rents are also increasing slightly. But I think this is also very much alarming because this is real prices, this is net of inflation and net of housing allowances. Here we also now go away from the energy poverty into a bit of overcrowded households, which is also very alarming. In my presentation later, I will also go deeper into this and show you about the young percentage of population. This is general, this is on EU level, and we see that Europe is divided here in certain point. The West versus the East, kind of the more east we go, the more, and south, the more we see the overcrowdedness, which means rooms per inhabitants. And this has to do with the fact that in South and East Europe, we have this familialization. Families, younger members stay with families, they have a dynamic, and more people live because they cannot afford to move on. And this is partly because the governments also invest less of their GDP into public and social housing. Again, this is overall European level. Housing allowances increase slightly, but not as much as after the crisis or during the crisis. But the overall investment in public and social housing, as you see, it's going down. But now again, in 2018, it's picking up again. So I think it would be interesting to look at most recent data, which we couldn't find. And I think finally, the rising construction costs, something that's bothering everyone, something I'm sure you have in Hungary, you have in Cyprus, you have in Spain, you have in the Netherlands, we have in Croatia. And we see in last 2 years, we have 20% of increase in the construction pricing, so labor and material and the entire supply chain. So I think this gives us the flavor of what we are going to discuss. And we have panels that can hopefully shine some light, help us to address certain issues. So we have Zadelj Kovač from Ceraneo, from Zagreb. I had a pleasure working with her during my secondment. And they are, you will introduce yourself, but they do great work with marginalized groups, with young people who are falling out of the system care, and they are kind of facing homelessness. Then we have Professor Dr. Gábor Csanádi. You will also talk about your recent work and about the Hungarian perspective. As we know, Hungary also had a big increase in rental and housing prices. And we have Jordi Serrano-Codina with us from the Catalonian, very local body that invests and trying to find ways to invest in affordable and sustainable housing. So, yeah. So I think, yes, we can then commence. I would like to invite our panelists. Maybe you can stay there. I think we have, if Anna, you can just maybe move here for the camera. And if Jordi, you can maybe come here. And then, Tijn, we will have some kind of dynamics.
I'll take some notes.
Later, yeah, we will both take notes because then we have to report later on.
My name, as you see, Gábor Csanádi, and it's dangerous to give photos of 15 years ago, but it is a professional photography because it was in France, a conference like this, and somebody made this photo.
Very good photo.
Absolutely. And also the sea, there is also the sea, so here in Barcelona, it's a different one. The sea is different. So without the joke, originally I'm an economist, planning mathematics, that was the name what I had my first degree. Never worked as an economist a day because I wanted to be a sociologist at that time because not only sociology but empirical sociology, I thought that it is a good compromise of world salvation and the science and exact science together. So I chose that thing. Also, I have to mention that I'm 76 years old. So it was at the end of the 60s, early 70s, when this has happened, to understand why I thought at that time these two things important together. So I became an empirical sociologist. I won't tell you how complicated it was to make this work under the umbrella of different jobs, because sociology was not a very good idea to find a job. So I was, but it had the advantage that I had never a real boss in sociology. Together with friends, we had to find out what is interesting or important for us and convince different institutions that it is important for them, and funding. Empirical sociology has this disadvantage that you need some amount of money to make it. So I had two important fields. First was sociology of education, how the system of sociology is improving inequalities instead of the official signs that inequalities are in the family structure. Schooling is making it smaller, and we proved that it is, of course, on the other side. Later, I became interested in urban sociology, urban structure, segregation. Segregation was good for me because it had some technological aspects, how to measure segregation, if the tendencies differ on the method you measure it, and things like this, which was good for my original exact mathematical interest. So if you want, I'm relatively proud also of this period of my interest. But what I felt more important was urban poverty. Urban poverty, how it is constructed, how central and local governmental initiatives are making urban poverty bigger, at least in Hungary, more specifically in Budapest.
So urban poverty has to do with housing poverty.
Well, housing, if you like, housing, but not only housing.
Not only housing.
What was important, that the problem with housing, if we see the titles of this project, but also as 1 hour ago I I listened your short presentations. It was clear also that it's not a technical or at least housing problem, but more of a sociological, political science problem.
Very good. Thank you. So we have now a kind of background, and we can continue with Anna.
So hello everyone. My name is Anna Zadelj Kovač. I work in Center for Development of Non-Profit Organization as a project manager called Ceraneo. Just a brief introduce or
What do you do? Maybe some kind of example of projects that they know what.
Okay, so first of all, Ceraneo is a non-profit organization that analyzes, investigates, and research for social problems, such as in field of social policies, and especially in for problems, for housing problems for vulnerable groups, and they encourage to promoting innovative approaches to finding their solutions for those problems, and especially with highlight the role of the civil society in that. So as a member of a couple of networks, we have done very much projects that include those vulnerable groups. And the main point was some of them that I would highlight would be translation of the Housing First. We were the first one in Croatia for that. And actually the highlight those approach in Croatia. And also beside that we do some workshops and trainings for interested NGOs and other stakeholders. For example, for Croatian Network for Homeless, we do trainings for them. And as a part of our job is also some advocacy activities. With, for example, we organize some conferences, panel discussion, debates, and round tables, and so on. So, for example, last year we had 2 conferences on that thematic. And I would highlight one panel. It was about affordable housing in context of 19 principles of the European Pillar of Social Rights. So as we are following the national strategies and strategic documents about that, also as Europeans, so we are trying to discuss with NGOs who are actually the most are interested, and also there appeared some stakeholders of local governments, and I think one of ministry and something like that. And we also had some round table about highlight the legislative of the law of the homeless that we do have in Croatia, but it is, we would say, insufficient. So we basically have the law about absolutely homeless, and not for relatively, and we can discuss maybe about that later.
Yeah, very good. Jordi?
Yes, my name is Jordi Serrano-Codina. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, for inviting me. I cannot avoid making a joke about the picture because it's my brother's picture. you can so yeah. So it's good for me because he's handsomer than I am. Having said that, I'm working at Incàsol, which is the real estate agency of La Generalitat, which is the Catalan government, and we basically have two main activities, which are land zoning, which means we do the zoning and then we develop residential areas and industrial estates, and we sell the plot to the final user at market prices. And then we do the social housing. and we invest in social housing. Yeah, we do the social housing, which is which conceptually in Catalonia works as we build apartment blocks, and we rent them at limited rents to those families which are in the lowest range of the income distribution, or because of their status, but basically because of their they are in the lowest range of the income distribution, they are eligible to those apartments. So when you have with those two activities in mind, when you're thinking on trying to provide social housing to those families which are in the lowest range of the income distribution, you have to keep in mind something that Marko was saying in his presentation. So it's the financing has coming from governments has been reduced drastically. So this is a main concern for us, and because of that, we have to keep in mind those two objectives, which are we cannot lose money in the project. So our investment investment projects have to be sustainable, or at least not lose money, or you have to make sure you'll have the funding to pay for the losses. And then you need the long-term financing for the project, because you're spending today on an apartment building, for instance, which you'll have to pay today, and your investment will be recouped in a 50, 70, or even more, or even longer period of time. So you have to keep those two things in mind. So you make our company, our agency, sustainable over time. So, how we used to have a business model which was the land activity, the industrial estate activity, and the residential areas used to provide a huge surplus, because turning potato fields into buildings used to be a profitable. Brownfield, yeah. Okay. Turning brownfield, yeah. I mean, it was like I was simplifying but the idea. But it was a profitable activity, and then the central government used to provide financing for the social housing, which wasn't not just for Incàsol or for the government agencies. I'm talking municipalities, but for the social initiative as well, which was an important part of or had an important part on providing social housing. And then the real estate crisis in 2012 came, and the zoning activity stopped to be profitable. And then in 2014, the sovereign debt crisis added on top, and the government just stopped funding social housing. So from that moment on, it has been very difficult for us to undertake significant projects. So we're having a very limited access to financing, and we have to make absolutely sure that our projects won't be losing money. Otherwise, we're putting at stake the sustainability of our agency. So from 2014 on, our ability to finance projects has been very, very limited, as I was saying, and we have been financing the highest end of the lowest income distribution, because it's the one which helps us to make it profitable. And then just to finish up with my my introduction, how we've been managing to achieve the second objective, which was the long-term financing. And this is a very specific and very local thing, which is for every rental contract, it is made in the real estate market. I mean, commercial premises, offices, or housing. You have to pay a deposit to the government, which means you have to pay a deposit, one month rent deposit to Incàsol, which is currently our main financing source of financing. No? So this is a very specific, very particular thing, but it's very helpful because this deposit like makes kind of a guarantee before the realtors and for the tenants and for the renters, but it provides us for a long-term financing for the social housing. And this is basically what we do.
Thank you. And we were honored to be guided by Pere yesterday morning to La Mina, where Incàsol is also involved in a big project. I wanted to do a quick round, and hopefully you could keep it a bit brief because we have a very dense program still ahead. But we talked, about public investment and like the lack of public investment in housing, and also the decreasing amount of public investment. But there's also different ways how the public entities can invest. They can invest through, for instance, Incàsol in supply. They can also invest in, to kind of support demand, which we're going to discuss later on, also through the presentation of Marko on housing allowances. But also, supply could be different ways. Like we saw social ownership schemes yesterday, social rent. Like there's different tenures that can be supported from a supply perspective. So I was wondering, and I know it's a very complicated question that like needs a nuanced answer, but hopefully you can keep it brief. What is wrong about the current balance or the current mix of public investment in your countries or in Europe as a whole? So how should it be improved? Maybe I can start again with Gábor and then finish with Jordi.
Well, it's the wrong end, I'm afraid, because at least in Hungary, the financial problem is for social housing, for housing the poor, is not these uninteresting small details of what you mentioned. The main, whether to invest this way or that way, no, our idea is not to invest in this. That's the simplest method, not to invest, because we are a market economy, as you may know, and if those part of the society who are the good part, they will earn it, and the whole of the money of the society won't spend for this. It's only partly a joke, what I mentioned. So seriously, what they think it would be financial or policy investment, it is for the middle classes and for the higher status groups, what they are thinking about, what type of credit systems or all these financial systems could work. It is interesting. It should be appropriate for those who would buy higher status part.
Is there a company like or organization like Incàsol in Hungary or in Budapest or in regional kind of someone that oversees like a housing fund?
I don't think so. But maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a real specialist in this, but I won't be too wrong. So, so I think it is the general housing policy of the state, what I think I can guess correctly. Not the institutional system, I think, is interesting, because it's a part of a general policy. The general policy is on central and local level as well, that that poor people should move out of our area. Yesterday it was interesting also that that if you ask a similar person in Budapest, they will try to explain that the solution would be if these poor people with problems would move out to another part of Budapest or to the country. That would be.
Very good, thank you. So similar to Croatia. There's no social post, there's no authority, and poor people are just on the way to build more expensive high-end. So I think this goes also well. We can come back with Jordi with the same question, but now with Anna and Ceraneo are doing something a bit different. So finding funds to deal with emergency housing. So maybe you can say, where do you see challenges in financing, and perhaps some good programs that could aid homeless, or young that are struggling, or young that could become homeless.
Thank you. I agree that it is very similar in Croatian, so you'll explain that later. Well, we had some projects that we implemented in Croatia. Actually, most of them included direct work with homeless people in partnership with other partners who actually doing that part of job, and we do those advocacy things and investigates and analyzing. As I was I had those experience working in Ceraneo, and along with my previous education, that gained me insights into those social policy and homeless problems. It is relieving for our ears. Okay, so I would highlight one project that we had that we implemented with youth in need status. You probably didn't hear, but we found them very housing excluded, because many of them. So need status is about persons aged between 15 until 29-year-olds. They do not in any system. That means that not in employment, not in education or training or something like that. So most people have some prejudication to them, like they are lazy, but not all of them are not interested in improving their situation. Some of them are grown up in childcare, in disturbed families and something like that. So and also, the main point of that project was that we included, that was recognized that there is a very lack of transversal and soft skills. So we have done those projects in educational way, but of course when you have housing excluded persons that in that age, you cannot just tell them, well, it would be great to have some more education. And you have to cooperate with another partner organization that will provide them home or some employment possibility. So that was we done. We have done innovative program for include them in verified adult education, and other programs are innovative in other way that with our partner organization we offer homeless people to have counseling about with psychologists, social workers, and so on. And of course, informing them about their rights and possibility to where can they stay the night, where can they maybe do the bath and get something to eat, because that's their primarily needs. So about
Yeah, I think that's very good. I think it gives us an idea what you're doing. What
Yes.
are these soft skills for these young? What are they?
Yes, well, about soft skills, the last previous economic crisis showed that, and our investigates in the previous project showed that there are very lack of soft skills. So that is one of the main reasons they are not probably on the market, and maybe they are not even included in society in other ways. But I wanted just to highlight another point of that it was. On the board in the previous at the beginning of this conference about aging homeless people, and I would just like to highlight that the structure of the homeless people actually changed. So a couple of years ago, for example, 3 years ago, there were many youth person in homeless, but today there are actually many older people, and that are kind of they're addicted, they're sick or something like that, and they really need help. So it seems to us that we need to think about buildings that are affordable them in that also practical ways, and to include maybe medical team or some pharmacy nearby. Or, well, it is the best to include a whole team to get them more inclusion in society.
Very good, thank you. We can then have Jordi's answer, and then we can open it to the audience.
Thank you, Tijn, for your question, because
What is wrong with your public investments in your country?
Yeah.
Investment and
So-
sharing
so we let me. I was telling you a very nice story on a government body which is providing social housing for the lowest income part of the for the people, for the families of the lowest part of the income distribution, and so on. But to put things into perspective, in Catalonia we have 4 million homes, and affordable housing or social housing is just 1% of this. It's believed to be an optimal, to be around 7%, 8%. The European or OECD target is 10%. So we're well behind. We're well behind and lacking resources to do that. And I wanted to tell you about the current we call it habitational crisis we have, which is not the real estate market falling apart, but families not being able to afford a house or a flat. In Barcelona, the median price is over 1,000 euro per month, which is unbelievably high. We've been having problems with tourism, with how we call it.
Expats, remote work.
Yeah, expats and tourist apartments, Airbnbs and so on. Gentrification. We're having a big gentrification problem now, and most of the families have to pay around 50% of their rent of their income in rent, which is well above the main standard, the acceptable or the accepted standards. So there is and Barcelona is very tiny, so it's 2 rivers, the sea and the mountain. So it's difficult to grow there. So we're having a supply problem. We cannot invest a lot in social housing. There is a huge demand. There is this gentrification problem, and then the government. But we're not addressing the supply side of the problem by putting a lot more housing. Then the government has decided to take a different approach, the Spanish government and the Catalan government as well, which is capping the rents. And capping the rents is always a controversial measure, because these measures have been put in place recently, and we still don't know what's really happening. The standard theory, economic theory, will tell you that realtors will keep from putting apartments in the market, or will start decreasing the level of maintenance and the level of expenditure to keep the housing park up to date. We don't know if we don't know yet how it's going to see what's going to happen, but apparently the rents these last couple of months have started have been flattening or even decreasing, but we don't have a still.
Your approach is cutting the rents. What did you do to start cutting the rents?
Just by law.
You say
You frost it. Yeah, you frost it. Yeah. You limit the rent to the previous rent.
In renewal of contracts, you're bound to the previous rent level.
Exactly.
Or the area rent.
So there is an index per areas or per towns, and whenever you renew the rent, the contract, then you have to stick to the previous.
Do you have a big problem with this kind of black market?
We still don't know.
Contracts?
We still don't know. This is a very recent policy.
It can be on paper 700 years, but then.
Yeah, this is what the classical economic theory would predict.
Yeah, okay.
Other than the black market, the decreasing level of maintenance, or keeping the apartments as an investment tool, not just as a deposit of value, not just an income maker for you.
It's an experiment in a way.
So.
For this is that the fiscal system has current standard control of ownership and rent and income through the Spanish fiscal institutions that limits some of the operation of black market that in Spain was.
Yeah, this is true. The IRS service, the Internal Revenue Services, the tax authorities know very much what you have, because the level of informatization and the deepness of their system is so big, and they know who am I renting to, who am I paying to, how much am I paying. So they can cross and they do cross these data. Yeah, they do cross this data, and they ask you, okay, what's going on with that? Why are you saying this if our data indicates that? So this is is going to prevent part of the black market issue, but we don't still know what will be happening, because it's so new. But the thing is, or to me, the main thing is that the lack of financing and the lack of funding from the government from the government prevents us to put new apartments in the market. So they started to control the rents instead of controlling the if one market is the supply side of the market has two main drivers, which are price and quantity. If we cannot do anything on quantity, they're trying to work on price. So basically, if you see a demand and a supply curve, they're fixing the curve with the problems that will be associated to that. And sorry for for being so long.
Yeah.
I think we can, since you have to go in 5 minutes, you have a doctor's appointment. I would like to open the floor if someone has a question directly for Jordi. Because then we can also address other questions.
Thank you. You talk about public investment in social housing, and I wanted to ask you what's your perspective about private investment in this kind of house, because from European Union they are talking about private and public corporation investing in housing, and this is one question, and I can split more. You talk about new housing, develop new social housing, and I don't know. I think in Barcelona it's different, but in some part of Spain there is a problem of empty housing. And do you think about renovate instead of build? And that's it. Thank you.
First question was about the private investors going into social housing. Yes, we've been discussing a lot about that, but is going to tell you much more on that I can. But we believe that the participants in the market, in the social market, are government or municipalities or social initiative, basically. We've been trying to drive in investors which were, during the last economic cycle, with so low interest rates, we kind of believed that a steady low return would be attractive for private investors, and it hasn't proved so. Not particularly. Not particularly. We cannot say it has. And now that interest rates are going up, it'll make it more difficult. So, but at some point we believed that, and we have a program here where we're basically leaseholding the land plots we're making to private investors, so they build the social housing at a decent and very long-term return. And this is what we can offer. We cannot offer you a short-term high return because it's not our business. It's not that part of the surplus has to be for the government, not for the private investor. But if you were willing to invest in something that will give you a steady and very long term, but it hasn't proved very successful so far. It doesn't mean it won't work, but it was very innovative and very different. And regarding the second part of your question, which was very interesting, those empty developments were mostly in tourist areas. So not where people want to live or need to live because they work there. So probably in the Valencian coast you have lots of empty apartments because of the real estate bubble, and they're still empty, but they're there. Not there, they're not in Barcelona or in Madrid or where people need to live because they work there. So this is challenging, but part of what we've been doing is to buy some of these developments in median towns, because it reduced very much our time to market. Because for us, starting a project, getting the land, building, renting, it took like 3-4 years, 5 years, and those apartments were already made. If their location wasn't bad, it was very good for us to go there and buy, and they were ready to market at a low rent. But we had to keep in mind the two objects I was telling you about, which were not going to a loss and financing the long term.
Yesterday we have seen, you can see in the program, that social housing, new construction. Do you know this place by chance, by any chance? Yeah. It was wonderful. It was very nice. It was sustainable. It was, all what you want in a new construction, and everything was good. But social. It was a relatively good middle class house with very intelligent distribution of the size of the apartments, not one type, but several, sea view, whatever you want. Nothing of a social house, in my opinion.
In what sense social house? Because I haven't seen the actual block in Masno. That's the one you're talking about.
I haven't been yesterday. We traveled.
Next to the coast.
No. It simply. Well, I won't say.
You mean in terms of the quality of the product?
The quality, and I think the cost of the construction.
The cost of the construction was 1,000 per square meter, was too low actually. But this is a new development, so we see it brand new.
Yeah.
And it's
It's
not,
easy
I
to
think
Yeah.
it's not social housing, it's affordable housing.
Well, if they say that it is a social housing, what will be the rent? Whom they think?
That block is developed by another institution, which is Incàsol. It's slightly confusing because they're Incàsol and they're Incàsol. It's a metropolitan area, Barcelona metropolitan area institution of housing development. And actually, its technical director is here. I was talking to him because we're like a kind of almost, we do the same role in two different institutions. The thing is, our blocks are more or less similar, maybe less quality. They're very good getting the best of their architects working. Those are social housing in the sense that those housing you visited yesterday, they are directed to people who have an income level, and if they were developed by us, what would happen is that you in order to fill the first tenants of those housing units, what you do is you call all residents in the area or who want to be residents in the area, and they register in a list, and we check if their income allows them to pay the rent we expected, which is higher, but there's a but, that once they live there or in our other housing stock, if they cannot pay because the situation has changed, they don't have work anymore, they can stay in the housing, and there's a subsidy, an allowance from government in order to guarantee that the investment return it's kept, and they have this allowance. If the situation sustains in long run, maybe they are transferred to another housing unit that has some lower rent. So out of our 16,000 units, more or less, that has Catalonian government currently, we're trying to expand it, but we have currently 16,000 units. Half of those are Incàsol, the other half are by another agency. New ones, recent, at least for the last 15, 20 years, are less than half of those. All the others have rent levels lower, so we can kind of mix the income distribution of each block in order to have different levels of income living together in one block, that sort of thing. Some of them have allowance, some of them don't have allowance. If you can pay for a while, you don't have allowance, and then you move to have allowance. If your situation has changed, you're ill, or you have a divorce and your family unit is shrinked, and you have just one income earner on the family unit, things like that are flexible. But still, what Jordi said, it's relevant. 16,000 units for a 4 million market units. Okay, it's like a drop in an ocean.
How long is the waiting list?
People they don't register on the list unless they know there's this project and they then enlist for that.
Is there a general waiting list?
Yeah, there's a Catalan waiting list.
How long do they wait? Maybe you have.
I have no idea. No, because what happens is that only people on like this list works. You register for the specific block that's been developed. Okay, you're registered on that list, and for other reasons, in order to get allowance, for instance, or subsidy, you have to be on the list as well. So people get in the list to get the allowance or to get emergency housing because they're being evicted and they're living with like 2 families in a single apartment. They register in the list, and social services decide this family has right to access one of those 16,000 units that's available, and then they move that family. There's like a social work table, we call it, that goes through those situations specifically. So the list doesn't work in that sense of how long I have to wait. Well, people usually find their solution by their own in that sense. It's
does it mean that the project Gábor visited yesterday, it is more like public rental housing than social rental housing? Public means that it is, let's say, publicly owned, public money has been invested there, but it is not for low-income people, it is for the, let's say, middle-income people or people with the young kids and young families.
I would say that let's define low, how much you can pay. If you can pay 30% of your income, and that 30% it's around, I say, 500 euro, you are low income in terms of average. Yes, you're low income. But there's people who have much less than you. And those are on emergency list, they are on subsidy, they are on the social housing part, not the new part of housing. That's clearly. And one of the things we try to do is in each of the new developments, that must know is IMSOL, is not ours, but in our developments, at least 10% it's for social of each block. So we have a 40 unit block, then 4 units will be social. The rest will be income. So because one of the things we learned is that if you put all social together in one single block, then you have all those externalities that you don't want. Well, it's engineering. I'm not sure it works, but at least we tried this. That's the idea. Because we try to solve both problems at the same time. Emergency with social and providing new units.
Great, thank you so much for the panel. Little round of applause. Adirane, may I give you the floor with your presentation? There is a clicker.
Yes, I prefer.
Yeah, great. So you can also scroll up if you want to go one back.
Too much things. Well, hello all. I'm Adirane Calvo. I'm an architect, and I'm working with the IRC research line from La Salle Ramon University. And I'm here to introduce a new approach that I'm studying for my PhD thesis under the RE-DWELL project framework to enhance building renovation passport through large-scale retrofitting evaluation. So we are changing the subject right now towards retrofitting. So, as all of you know, the European Green Deal targets climate-neutral cities by 2050, but still 75% of the buildings are inefficient and only 1% of them are renovated per year. So, to achieve the targets, the renovation wave aims to double the renovation rate by 2030. And in line with this, the European Union has been developing a lot of policies in order targeting energy efficiency of buildings. And the last one is the new Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which offers new legislative, financial, and technical tools to achieve the renovation rate. So this EPBD framework focuses on sustainability of cities, but adding 2 additional key variables, which is timing, to set milestones towards cities decarbonization, and scale which requires for a cross-scale assessment when considering cities as complex systems with different interaction factors. Thus, the large-scale evaluation allows us to identify key areas of intervention while individual actions allow to achieve the targets. And here is where the new tools can play an important role in all the renovation. So, identifying key areas of intervention and while studying sustainability result in a need to plan renovation through retrofitting programs, but these programs face some issues, such as the lack of information about the building stock and the risk of assessing isolated sustainability aspects without considering other factors. And here is where large-scale building retrofitting evaluation can help, for example, through archetypes bottom-up approaches to estimate buildings information, or through integrating economic, social, and environmental aspects for a comprehensive planning. So the RE-DWELL project, coordinated by La Salle in collaboration with the REC Institute, it's an example of this large-scale retrofitting evaluation. Its aims is to develop a data-driven platform to help stakeholders to assess urban areas, evaluate the renovation potential, and develop renovation plans. And this is done through building classifications, archetypes evaluation, and cross-scale interconnected multi-domain indicators. At the building level, the European Union targets zero emissions buildings by 2050, and this requires an increasement of the willingness and awareness of the citizenship about renovation, and existing tools, at least in Spain, are failing to achieve these targets. So here's when the building renovation passport as a new tool play an important role. This passport, it's a document to inform people about energy efficient renovation, but step by step, through a long-term roadmap developed by an energy audit done by a technician, but in collaboration with the building owners. Among other benefits, it includes the user-centered approach, the mitigation of uncertainty and economic constraints because of this staged renovation, the adaptability to changes, and the inclusion of broader aspects because it's in constant collaboration with the inhabitants of the building. So, however, this passport also faces some challenges. And here in the screen you can see some of them. Among legal ones, we can find the access to data, but also relying on voluntary participation for renovation. Financial ones include the cost of this passport when we consider energy auditing for evaluating, and the financial difficulties of the population. The environmental one arises when we only focus on energy efficiency, operational energy efficiency, and don't consider other aspects such as embodied energy, which is predicted to have a greater impact in buildings because of the renovation activities, but also because of the buildings will be more efficient, so the operational energy will be down. Social challenges include the lack of awareness of the citizenship, and the final big challenge is to connect these long-term plans coming from Europe with individual actions in a local context. So the situation in Spain is following the trends of the European Union. Last data from the long-term residential renovation strategy in Spain revealed that we have an old building stock with more than 50% of residential buildings date before the 1980s, and only 25% have been rehabilitated somehow due to the current tools. But it doesn't mean that these rehabilitations are focused on energy efficiency. This results in 60% of the buildings non-energy efficient, and low renovation rates due to the tenancy regime of Spain, which is mostly multi-ownership properties, the economic constraints of more than the half of the population, and they think about the energy retrofitting as a non-profitable activities because Actually, the energy prices till the war were so low that didn't pay for the investment. And next generation funds tried to increase this renovation rate, but the perspective of the involved stakeholders revealed that these funds were unsuccessful because administrations face a lot of bureaucracy and have issues with dissemination of this information. Technicians face information requirements, super high information requirements, but also time constraints to give all this information, while dealing at the same time with decision-making complexities due to the tenancy regime and the lack of awareness of the population. And they also complain about the need to first invest to receive a fund that most of the cases didn't cover the first investment. And for owners, economic factors, scarcity of aid, and lack of information and management difficulties prevent them from applying for this fund and in a final step for renovate. So the challenge is clear, at least for Spain. We need to increase the renovation rate, facing precarious Spanish building stock, and prepare citizenship and limitations with the existing tools. The RE-DWELL project aimed to address some of these challenges by evaluating sustainability at different scales through the different approximations. The first one is to evaluate socioeconomic domains through the integration of social and economic data into different scales. And the second one is to use RE-DWELL archetypes evaluation to assess environmental aspects. The idea I want to share with you is to following this RE-DWELL framework to integrate this archetype evaluation within the building renovation passport for energy auditing and life cycle assessments. To do so, the idea is to define RE-DWELL archetypes representing different building clusters and evaluate them through detailed energy auditing and life cycle assessments, while the represented buildings will be evaluated through less detailed assessments. And then the results can be extrapolated using the archetypes detailed evaluation. So the benefits for the new tool for the passport are several. It can reduce economic constraints because the distribution of cost amongst all the participants. It can also improve communication and sharing knowledge because not only people in one building will be participating in the process, but other buildings too. And it can include better retrofit options beyond operational energy efficiency and considering larger scale options, like, for example, energy communities. The general benefits are shared with RE-DWELL, which are accuracy of data, improving cross-sectional communication via transparent data, reduce the timing and technical evaluation and information requirements for technicians, and the mitigation of not all, but some economic constraints and data management burdens from homeowners. So, in summary, emerging policies are introducing new tools that can be beneficial, not only for people, but also for administration to prioritize areas of action and give assistance. However, these tools, both the new ones and the existing ones, have challenges that can be partially overcome if we consider not only the tools itself, but also synergies between them. Like the one I present here, and but future research is needed to know how to implement this idea and validate the process of implementation. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I suggest we immediately move towards Marko's presentation, and then have space for questions in the panel.
Very good. Very good. Cool. Thank you, Tijn. I will try to go through this presentation as quick as possible, just to save some time and to have somewhat panel time. So I wrote an abstract on the topic of improving housing affordability through housing allowances, something that's quite new in Croatia and something that had a pilot project last year. So I wanted to document what was happening. So this is the structure that you will see. But I also wanted to take out clips from newspapers that's more or less 1 or 2 months. I think this one from the last week, and also machine translated, so that you can see that housing problem is somewhat present in Croatian newspapers as the illusion of affordable housing. We live in rental hell. As many as 600 apartments are gapping empty. The situation is unattainable. Experts tell us what needs to be done. You see one expert here is Professor Bežovan. Other is a broker. And the third one is economist. How to get an apartment in Croatia, then there are some proposals. This sounds alarming. In Croatia, even 44% of apartments are not used for living, so 44% are used for business, for renting, for Airbnb, and so on and so forth. So this is replaced by Airbnb now, so nothing really changed. So we didn't come to this situation overnight. It was gradual, so cities increased, supply didn't follow the demand. After privatization, the inequality gap widened, worsening the position, decreasing housing affordability, forcing young generations into precarious works and rental market. And now we are facing with the generation rent, which is such a big term that it actually had a name on its own. Central Eastern European countries, as I said, had privatization. Now housing units are put into business, and this is why we have to look at this pilot project to see if this could be scalable. So the aim of this paper was to explain allowances, what's happening in Croatia, and to assess if this could be a large-scale instrument. The rest did not take place, so I will skip. But I'll tell you what happened. Housing Croatia, just quickly, this is one of the biggest estates. It's a dual kind of building. You can see it's called the Mammoth. It's huge. I think 5,000 people live there. So giveaway privatization created tenants, a nation of homeowners from the nation of tenants. The state withdrew from the market. The new constitution did not say specifically that housing should be taken care of by the government. And now young families are leaving. From census in 2011, we have a drop from 4.3 million to 3.9 million. It's very optimistic. We think it's much lower. And 90% of homeowners are asset rich, but cash poor. But asset rich is also a bit overstatement. A lot of them live in rural areas where houses are very badly insulated. They use wood, and they have. So asset rich is more of a kind of mainstream term that we use. Overcrowding rate we already seen, now zoomed for Croatia and for the age between 16 and 19. This is more or less the generation that Anna was talking about in NEET. Only I think it includes 15 years old. So you can see 44% live in an overcrowded, and this is the productive age for starting a family. This is well, it moved a little bit, since maybe 20 years ago. But I think this is alarming. This could lead to big problems. And then again, the number of dwellings per 1,000 inhabitants. Croatia has the highest number from this slot. Greece is not there, so I think the Greece would be higher, I think. Or Cyprus, maybe. But in this report that I saw, we have 604 apartments or housing units per 1,000 inhabitants. Yeah. Oh, I had that thing. So housing affordability, I just wanted to show you how housing market in Croatia works. It's very fragmented. When we talk to real estate agents, they say there are 3 markets in Croatia. It's Zagreb, it's coastal region, and it's everything else. Like we don't care. So Zagreb is here. You see 10,000 transactions, a bit more, in 2022. And mostly here on the coast. Here you see the median price of this apartment. So it's close to 2,000 euros per square meter. Here is the highest, also close to 2,000. So you can see this is the most important for housing market. And you can see this is how housing is really relative here, because around Zagreb, you can see how much lower the prices can get. But we have a hill, so you have to cross over, so it's not very commute friendly. So what are housing allowances? We see them as a demand-side subsidy, both income and housing subsidy, originally aimed to increase housing consumption, so to give a chance to someone to move into a bigger flat or house. There's a housing benefit gap, which is a difference between housing costs and housing income spent on housing. Usually they rent households who receive. It's targeted to households in need. And for example, in Slovenia, you can also receive up to 80% of housing allowance while you're in social housing already. So I think Slovenia has a very good system. And there's still no proof in literature that it increases the housing price overall. I was looking and I couldn't find. I found the two streams, but there is no definite answer. So what do we have in Croatia? We have some kind of support schemes targeting low-income housing households. So we have housing allowance, something in a smaller proportion. We have fuel allowance, so households apply and then they give wood. Some energy challenge buyers and so on. It's administered by local authorities, and then there's this recent program for students. But we now focus on the pilot project. It's been administered by the Central Office for Demography and Youth. Together they come up with it with the ministry. So the funds are secured by the national government. Local authorities apply to this fund. And then they can distribute further to maximum 10 beneficiaries. Maximum 19,440 for local authority that applied to 10 people. It's for young individuals, 18 to 30 years old, and families, which are three groups, with children, without children, and single-parent families, who rent on the private market and salaries are not higher than the average salary. And how much? So 180 for families, and per month, which is 2,160 annually, and 120 euros for individuals and families without children, which is 1,440 per year. So what I did, I called this demographic office. So I did an interview, and they gave me data they have. It's unpublished. So there was no more need for other interviewees, because I got the person that's like elite interview, but only with one person. So let's skip to the conditions. So these individuals, families, households, they have to have tenancy contract to be eligible. There are certain expenses that are not included. They have to be Croatian citizens, and they need to have residency in that city or municipality for at least 1 year, full year. They need to have an employment status of at least 6 months with the same employer. The monthly income, as I said, not higher than national average, and they cannot have a home. They cannot own a house. And in the tenancy contract needs to be kind of conducted in the free market, confirmed by notary. Housing units must be in the area of the city, and it has to be the contract has to be valid for a full year. Why am I saying all these details? Because these will be very important in the next slide. So the structure of beneficiaries were 84% of young families with children, 16 young individuals, but no young families without children actually applied. This is the structure. I can skip. And now the results. Total of 43 beneficiaries in 11 municipalities. So as I said, maybe I didn't say what was the full amount predicted. It was more than 700,000 euros. And yeah, I have it. Here. Oh, good. So this was the total value of the project. And in the end, they ended up distributing 11% of the funds. So the pilot project was a failure. Do you have an idea why? Why did I went to all these, maybe Southern Europeans would hear? Too many restrictions. One was a deal breaker, the contract. So they had no formal contracts, most of them. So they applied, but they had some kind of. So this was the biggest problem. Then these are the smaller problems, let's say, that did occur. So the contracts were less than 1 year, one full year. They had maybe no employment conditions with at least 6 months with the same employers. They had no residence. Income level was too low overall, too strict terms. But also, these are the parts of Croatia that they don't have so much housing units where you can actually rent. So, and most of them are houses. So what are the possible improvements to relax the employment criteria, to increase income threshold, the tenancy contract duration of less than a year? They probably will do maybe 6 months. But still, the contract has to be there, otherwise it defeats the purpose. And there was also residency conditions, because people are in Croatia sometimes lazy to go and change their documents where it says you have a new address. So, and they just say, oh, okay, maybe I'll change it next time. And then when this pilot project happens, they do not have the full year of residency. And to increase the visibility so that more people actually apply and see this. To conclusion, in such a fragmented housing market, local specific needs must be accounted, so like what we see now, and modernizing allowances is needed. So these kind of pilot projects, I think, are needed while the social housing are being built. So I think I can conclude here. Whoops, thanks. So we have Adirane, who just presented as one of the panelists. Again, we will have this very, very friendly kind of moderation. We have Charalambos, like the Dutch. Yeah, I was warned by Dutch person. And unfortunately, we supposed to have Carlos, who said he was unfortunately ill just yesterday, so we don't have him anymore. But Tijn and I will keep you company. And we will involve audience much more now. We have 25 minutes to finish. Let's keep it 20 and then maybe 5 minutes to wrap up.
May I
Definitely
start off? And then Charalambos can actually introduce himself properly. But maybe two clarification questions for both of you, or one for each. One for Adirane. You mentioned that the building renovation passport could also boost energy communities, I believe. And I was quite intrigued, like how could that work? Could you maybe elaborate?
Oh yes, the building renovation passport itself, it's thought at building level, but the approach I am taking is to include this general large-scale evaluation, and with this cross-scale evaluation about what are the people. What people wanted and how they live on their homes, and what other near buildings wanted and how they live on their homes. And this common approach, it could increase the opportunities to have these kind of communities. Like if we keep in touch with people and we maintain them in touch, they just need to talk, and we as techniques, we just need to give them ideas and give the benefits of that. And this could be included in the passport, because the passport is to inform. It's not a tool for us, it's a tool for people. And I think that these kind of things, thinking out the scope of the dwelling, of the building, like including other aspects, should be in the passport and could be beneficial in that way.
Thank you very much. And then an even quicker clarification question for Marko, because you said, you showed overcrowding, which is a big problem in Croatia. And you also showed that Croatia has a very high amount of dwellings per number of inhabitants. Is a difference apartments for tourists, or?
So I think a lot of these apartments that are they are empty. So they are not used for living, they are used for business, which means they're employed over Airbnb and probably just used over summer or season, whatever. Sometimes it's from March to November, depends on the part of Croatia. But I think during winter these places are empty. So these are holiday homes that you just rent when it's convenient. I think Airbnb just speeded up, and housing was never as liquid as it is today. Overnight you can get 50 euros out of your apartment and just move in back. So that's a problem. That's the regulation problem. That's the taxation problem. The taxation on the second real estate, or the real estate that are not being occupied. And yeah, I think that could summarize.
Thanks for clarifying, and I think there will be many more questions for you guys later on. But first, I want Charalambos to properly introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Charalambos Iacovou. I'm an architect. I'm working for a public organization in Cyprus dealing with social and affordable housing. It is managed from a 9-member board of directors who are appointed directly from the president of the government. Cyprus Land Development Corporation is established 40 years, I think, ago, and it has delivered more than 4,000 residential units all those 40 years and more. And what I am very proud of, I was very proud of my work, is that 5 years ago, we identified the need for the generation rent, and we have started collaborations with local authorities, municipalities, in order to develop and deliver residential rental units to people that met difficulties to acquire from the private sectors. We are a self-funded organization, so the funding was a big problem. So we got in touch with a European Investment Bank. They were very enthusiastic to fund our project. Our vision was to deliver more than 1,000 units in 5 years' time. And we went out to architectural competitions to get the better studies for the projects. And then the board of directors changed, the government changed, and we are in zero. What I want to say that everything is a matter of political issues and political strategies. And since the governments are changing every 5 years, 6 years, I don't know, the strategies are changing, and we are at the beginning every time. That was a matter of thought, and I'm open to any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Are there pressing questions? Maybe Marja?
Thank you. I have a question for Marko. I think it is quite surprising. We are talking about affordable, sustainable housing, the lack of it, the urgency to do something. You demonstrated all kinds of figures. And then you have this pilot in Croatia to make housing more affordable. And then you conclude it does not really work, and we need to make it more visible. Can you tell me a bit more? I mean, I would expect it to be very popular. Everybody applying wanted to have this reduction in housing expenses. So what is the political framing of this pilot if it is not visible? Can you tell a bit more why it did not work?
Thank you, Tijn. Thanks for the question. So a little bit on the pilot. I thought I will not get any information, but then this Office for Demographic and Youth was very kind and shared their information. So there could be that the funds were secured, and then the calls may have been a bit rushed to make it as quick as possible. So the advertising, let's say, the call went from this national office to local authorities, and then local authorities had some time frame to advertise again to end users, and then they applied. So there could be that their campaign wasn't visible enough if they only had it on their local authority websites, and I don't know.
Is there no politician that wants to
No.
success out of it?
So one of the challenges that I took out from the RE-DWELL is the lack of political will, and that really summarizes all this problem.
So there is a pilot, but no real political.
There was a pilot. The funds were secured, but then people did apply, but they didn't meet the criteria. So
it was not prepared at all to make it. It was kind to invest in the cities where those ruling parties do have their own mayors. So the concept.
Yeah.
Personally, I was approaching vice president there offering kind of monitoring or evaluation process for the project as such, but without response at all.
But also, yeah, people did apply, but they didn't have the criteria. That's the thing. And also, they have the media salary. They need to have the contract. They need to have work employment with the same employer. So these were all eliminating criteria. So they are now perhaps thinking to approach this differently.
Do you have statistics on how many people applied but didn't get
Yes, it's there's a number. Let's say that 70 applied. Oh no, actually more. I have to see. They did provide me with the entire Excel of because they also followed up the beneficiaries to give them some demographics. This is what I had there, but I have to check. I don't know it now. I also don't think that I put it on the slide how many people applied, only how many local authorities. So from 60 or almost 70, I think 69 authorities, 43 authorities did have at least someone with all the criteria to receive funding. But okay, I mean, the funds are left. Hopefully they will be used in the next round, which can be also a bit more generous. Yeah, but this is a big issue. You have a good project, you have good initiative, and then 11% of the money is distributed.
You relieve criteria.
Yeah. So the criteria must be relieved.
If I may have a comment, talking about how to improve affordability and sustainability of housing, personally, I do see as a real challenge to make more efficient and effective that tool of developing housing allowancing system, which might respond even to help people of new generations. Let's say in transitional countries, we are saying that home ownership is not anymore affordable to the bigger part of the majority of the people from a younger generation. Those without family support and those, and we do have only small part of those who are IT professionals who are earning enough to afford home ownership. Then the fate of other is to rent on the unregulated, mostly private market. And for that reason, we should rely much more providing efficient system for those who are renting in order to improve housing affordability as such. And from my point of view, let's say monitoring of what's going on the European side of level, providing, reading all those recommendations from different professionals and consultants, and I haven't seen that much about the needs to make housing as such much more affordable using housing allowances as advanced tool. It is very much clear that we do not have funds, that we do not have political will to invest in social housing or to invest in affordable rental housing. Then otherwise, my personal perception is, and it is important also for our project that we didn't pay enough attention to that concept of the other social interventions on the housing market. We've been looking for the new investment in the social and public rental housing. Then besides that, looking for that concept of the housing sustainability and the retrofitting and energy saving, it was a very unique initiative in Croatia. Among those who are, let's say, homeowners in public buildings, once it was a regulation before 1990, all those housing buildings which used to be under 5 floors, they've been constructed without elevator. And now, in fact, we used to have a kind of national movement of those homeowners with housing units in those housing blocks to let's say, to change legislation and to be eligible for EU funding providing affordable funding for affordable loans to those owners to improve the quality, even to bring an elevator inside those buildings. And also they were very much aware to accept other standard improving energy efficiency through such investment. But then those from the EU side, they told, oh no, we are not willing, it's not eligible to provide such funding for such project, which might be definitely very much useful and very much appreciated by the local citizens, because citizens are enrolled much more than authorities, national or local or construction sector and such. Also, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much, Professor Bežovan, for following up also on the housing allowance presentation of Marko. And I guess that's also why I asked the question about public investment and what to actually invest in, because housing allowances are also a form of investing in the affordability of housing, but it's a really demand side kind of subsidy. The Netherlands also chose to do so starting from the 70s with a left, center-left, Den L government. But then, since then, investments in supply, so social housing, social rental units, have decreased, especially since liberalizations in the 90s. We also have two, like from Cyprus and from Barcelona, from Catalonia, two organizations that are specialized in investing in the supply of social and affordable housing. I saw a fascinating statistic lately about the public investment in housing of the UK and Austria. The UK, where housing affordability is probably the most awful of the whole of Europe. And Austria, of course, Vienna is a social housing Valhalla, but Austria as a whole has very affordable housing. One chose to subsidize demand, that is the UK. Since the Beveridge report, they've always support supply, demand, not supply. And Austria chose to invest in supply. All those social housing providers are heavily subsidized. They have revolving funds, and the supply of social and affordable housing has always been on point in Austria, as a unique country in Europe. Maybe my statement is a bit provocative, but my suggestion would be, isn't this actually kind of showing that investing in supply of affordable housing might be a better investment long term than investing in demand side housing allowances, especially if these allowances go to private investors in housing and therefore maybe even increase rental prices because people are able to afford a higher rent with these allowances.
I can tell you now, but I also want to hear what from Cyprus, what is the situation, and also quite eager to hear about if you have some kind of public interventions, like private investments as well. Okay, but in Croatia we have so much of housing stock that is there that can be just used, which is not used now, so they can be encouraged by tax treatment to be used for some kind of rent. There is so much brownfield in Zagreb that we don't know what to do with, but maybe you should come for a year or two in Zagreb and you'll make a good case there. So, and also building from scratch. I think housing allowances is a good way to bridge this time. Let's say if we decide to build from scratch. If there is no way to move this empty housing, which is in private ownership or maybe city ownership or some kind of public ownership, if it takes too long to employ this brownfields or whatever, whilst it's being built, you have housing allowances because people need help now. People need to have some kind of dwelling. They need to live somewhere. So I think housing allowances has their place, but I agree the long-term solution is to have supply. But yeah, what is the position on Cyprus? And
I will tell you something different that you are waiting to hear. Governments not only are not interested to invest money to social and affordable housing, but are not willing to lose money. What I mean with this, in a collaboration with a local authority and municipality that it owns a big piece of land in the city center, we will be the developers and we will give back some of the units, a percentage of the units. The government asks the municipality to pay tax, and a huge amount of tax. What do you call them? Not profit tax, a capital gain tax. Capital gain tax, yes. And then we ask not to pay the VAT or to pay reduced VAT for the developer. And the answer was no. So not only they want to invest, they don't only want to lose money. From the other side, there are two schemes that the government is running for affordable rent and affordable buying. These schemes are running for 5 years now. And to be honest, because the deliverables will be through our organization, only 2 units are coming all these 2 years. And it is a bit difficult to the schemes in what are the schemes? They are giving intensive to the private sector by giving 45 or 25% more to building coefficient in a plot under certain criteria, of course, and almost half of them, they are delivered through affordable housing through our organization, and the other half they will sell in the price they want to sell. The affordable price will be just cost price of the construction. But 5 years, only 2 units.
and this is rented, it's not sold.
It's 2 schemes, affordable rent and affordable.
Okay.
So what I wanted to add that the government is not interested in this, because government it is typically a long-term solution, even if to the supply or the demand side you try to invest. At least our government during the last 30 years, they are not interested in invest in such a long-term thing. At present, if they invest in low status population, the middle classes whom they want to get as voters will be against them. That's why no part in the political arena who would effectively say that even to think about which method would be better in Hungary, where we don't have such a big empty supply and so on. So I think if we try to think about which would be more rational, we must take into consideration quite a lot of different aspects. The political situation, at least in these post-SOT countries, how they are different of the traditional Western problems. Okay, Southern also, but it is somewhere in the middle, I suppose. And also how these societies look like. Vienna is absolutely different, for example, because of the red Vienna of the 20s, 30s social policy. So without that, it's impossible to judge what they do at present. Well, yes, it is one example why our friends don't understand what is possible in Croatia or in Hungary. It's no problem, because it's so clear how to make things. And
this is why it's impossible to take to copy projects.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
ways, and in Croatia, often you hear politicians now before election say, "We're going to have an affordable housing program. We're going to use Austrian Vienna model, or we're going to have the other says, oh, we're going to do the I don't know Dutch model." I mean, it's not really possible because
absolutely
we have no idea what it is, and it's built on hundreds of years of tradition. So
maybe I really enjoy these pilot projects anywhere, which are interesting and useful to do it. I'm not against that, but maybe we should be a little bit slower. I mean, to think about what happened. There may be not the best experiences, or how is it told, but the worst experiences are useful, or more useful to learn how they survived after the problematic results.
Okay, I think this comes to an end now. We are at 1 o'clock sharp, or I think. At least my watch says so. Yeah. I wish to thank you on behalf of Tijn and myself for joining the panel, and you for the panelists. And hope we at least touched the topic and heard something new today, each of us. And yeah, I hope we all keep in touch.